Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live show, another live Chino's Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And most importantly, getting into the chat and letting me know how you guys are thinking and feeling. Yeah. How about them goosebumps, y'all? Does anybody got goosebumps from the transfer window so far? Listen, I'm only joking, but I do think that we have to keep it a little bit light or else we're going to lose our fucking minds. It's a long transfer window and we have no control over it. So, I have to just keep it as light as I possibly can. I'm worried, but there's nothing I really can do about it. I do think it's a little bit not strange because this is just how the fan base tends to be, but how anybody could sit there and tell you that it's too early to do business and you should just relax after the last two windows that we had. I just think ultimately, like after you have the January window and the last summer window that we had, you really can't blame people for being a little bit on edge because they've shown very recently that they don't really have uh they don't they're not the type of club that like have shame. If things are not going right, they'll still just stick to whatever principles they have and not buy and not support the club and not support the players and just kind of like go with whatever. So I do think that if you're feeling nervous, if you're feeling anxious, you're totally valid in the way that you feel. If you're questioning the direction that the club is going in at this stage, if you are questioning whether or not we're going to get the players in, I think you're fully valid in the way that you feel because ultimately, at the beginning of last summer's window, we were having these exact same conversations, and the same people that were saying, "Oh my gosh, you're just panicking for no reason," went missing when we just signed Sterling or tried to pretend like Sterling was perfect, or a good signing. So I think also because our rivals are also moving very quickly, whether that's Manchester United with Cunha and Mbomo, or that's Chelsea moving with Delap and trying to get in a new goalkeeper and Mike Mignon, whether that's Manchester City with Reinders and Shirky, or Liverpool, two new fullback signings as well as Wirtz. We are behind everyone. We have done nothing yet, really. So I think the whole nothing, like the window just opened, calm down, that gimmick, you can throw that right in the trash. Like if you have concerns, you are more than valid in those concerns based on the last two windows and the fact that other people are doing stuff and nothing, the beginning of the window has nothing, is not changing anything for them. So why should we feel like the beginning of the window should mean something to us? Especially because I don't feel like there's anybody else that should be more active based on the disappointment of our season in the last couple windows. So you are more than valid and in the way that you feel. You're not negative. You're not just being negative for negative sake. You have valid reasons and valid concerns based on a lived experience of going through the last two windows. So I just wanted to put that out there because I said, like, the same people say the same things over and over again about, why are you panicking? Why are you doing this? Why are you that? You guys always say that we're going to get everything done and it's fine, and we don't, so calm down. We're allowed to be concerned and have conversations around it. If you don't care about the window, you don't care whether we get it right, you don't care whether we beat our rivals to certain targets, you don't care, then just take a back seat and sit down and don't get involved in the conversation. It's not for you. So now, like I said, on this channel, my goal is to add a little bit of, be open to the conversation around being anxious and maybe a little bit like concerned, but add a little bit of lightness to it because ultimately we can't control it. And we'll talk about the links and all that kind of stuff. But, on this channel, I just feel like we're in for a very stressful summer window and beginning to next season. And so for me personally, I am not wanting to let my emotions run rampant because the beginning of next season is going to be incredibly difficult, not because we haven't seen the schedule or anything, but because Arteta really doesn't have any room for failure. Like, I think he really has to start the season like a house on fire. And so, depending on how the summer window goes, it could really contribute to whether he does well or not. And so, we're just along for the fucking ride, you know? So, add a little bit of lightness, laugh it off a little bit because it's going to be a long window, you know? So, yeah, that is the goal of the channel right now. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Neb says we need to stay well away from these free transfers that are offered. Rap says Zubimendi also has doubts. With the Zubimendi thing, now I'm all for a panic session. That being said, there's nothing to panic about when it comes to Zubimendi. Basically, we have about a month's time between now and when they'll probably announce Zubimendi, where journalists and whoever are going to try to create doubt for clicks because they know that we're a very sensitive fan base and we're very anxious, and they want to set up kind of like a story where Zubimendi will reject us and go to Real Madrid. And so if you actually read what Zubimendi was saying, they asked him about the medical, and he cannot speak about a medical before it happens. He cannot speak about the transfer until it happens. And so we're in like that weird state where Sociedad and Arsenal are trying to work together to make the signing go through in July so that it goes for a different year, like from an accounting standpoint. So it's done. They just can't do anything until July, and they can't announce it until July. Now, he'll probably do his medical when he comes back from international duty, but he can't speak about something until it happens. If he gets injured during international duty, but he says he's going to do a medical, it gets messy. So I don't expect somebody to speak about a medical. He's going to dodge questions and create whatever little doubt or whatever, just throw the journalist off. Then the journalist asks him, well, what if Xabi Alonso calls you? And he says, he's my idol, but I don't want to speak about hypothetical things that are not happening. So, and then the journalist picks apart what he said and then puts it together in a way that sounds like he's saying, I'm not going to Arsenal, but I could go to Real Madrid. I don't think we need to worry about that. It's an accounting thing. Enough people have said that it's going to get done. It's done. It's whatever. Nothing is happening, with that. But we are the weirdest club when it comes to doing transfers, because a lot of our transfers, especially over the last couple of seasons, have been stalled and or like pending because we want things to go into a different accounting year and stuff like that. So Zubimendi is definitely one of those. I don't know if it means we're broke. Are we brokey? I don't know, but that's not something to really worry about. You guys know, if there was something to worry about, I would be fucking panicking. I'm not panicking about Zubimendi. And Basta says, it's not done. This guy changes his mind a lot, Zubimendi. Just read the comments and stuff, or read actually what he said, and you won't be worried about it anymore. It's the media right now is very aware that Arsenal fans are really concerned about transfers. And so because Zubimendi tends to change his mind a lot or whatever, they're using that as a way to try to get us riled up, which it's worked, but he didn't really say anything about not coming to Arsenal or changing his mind or anything. He quite literally cannot speak about the transfer until it's done. Arsenal don't talk about any transfer until it's done. So him and the president of Sociedad basically said the same thing. It's a long summer, everything is up in the air. He could go, he could stay, which is essentially what he said. And then if the journalist asks you, well, if Xabi Alonso asks you to come to Real Madrid, what are you going to say? And he says, well, he's my idol, but I don't want to speak about a hypothetical transfer that's not happening. He didn't really say anything. There's nothing really to worry about when it comes to Zubimendi. If I felt like there's something to worry about, I would tell you guys. Jonathan says, seems like we have been chasing Zubi and Sesko for years. Move along, Arsenal G's. Wesley says it's weird because the manager is more concerned with being in alignment with the board to keep the finances and pacify the fan base with roundabouts words. Yo-Yo says that's interesting. Pat says they don't want the sale on the books until July. Exactly. And so until then, they can't really talk about it because we don't know what's going to happen. So just wait until after international break. He'll probably do his medical then, and then it'll probably take until the end of the month for them to announce it, you know? So that's pretty much what it is. Like, I don't That's pretty much as clear as I could get on it, really. Um, but in terms of other things, I think James McNicholas put out a brief. The thing about these briefs that come out during the transfer window is when we go out of competitions or when we go through really difficult times, especially before the window opens, the briefings are always about war chests and going big and breaking the transfer record and this player and that player. And then as we start to get further and further along in the window, the narratives start to change. And a lot of the narratives are kind of put out there by the likes of like James McNicholas or David Ornstein or whoever. And so, where at the beginning of the window, it was guaranteed that Arsenal were going to bring in two attackers. They're looking at this player and they're looking at that player. Isak is their number one, but Sesko and Gyokeres, blah, blah, blah. It's now kind of changed a little bit, and James Nicholas is speaking about, Rodrigo is kind of out of our range. Nico Williams is out of our range. They're still kind of hemming and hawing between Sesko and Gyokeres, but they've held talks with Sane. And I originally, when the original stuff was coming out from Christian Falk and the other like German-based journalists around Sane and Arsenal's interest, I was thinking it was just the agent. But James McNicholas saying that Arsenal actually did hold talks with him worries me just a little bit because as a third signing for an attacker, Sane is okay. I still would kind of be like, don't really want that. But as the winger signing, that's not good enough, you know? So, yeah, it's not it's not that I think that Zane is crap or anything like that. It's just these types of signings don't tend to work for us, guys that used to play for City and, have been around the block and are a little bit older. They tend to have, it's like the Sterling Willian effect. He really, really wants to stay at Bayern and they're not offering him what he wants. And so I don't know, hearing that or even remotely interested in Zane makes me a little bit concerned that maybe we've given up on going big on the wing signing. And because maybe Sesko is also a little bit more expensive than we thought he was going to be, it's leaving us a little barren when it comes to getting the two attackers. To me, there's just no excuse not to get in two attackers, and we need two level raisers. If you bring in Sesko and Zane, it's not two level raisers. It's definitely a younger player and somebody that's like pre-wash, so that is concerning. I want to know what you guys think about it because, some people like I do kind of sit in that kind of like in between of it's not that I don't think Zane is crap. I just feel like these signings don't work out for us for some reason. Like they work out for everyone else, but they don't work out for us, and I'm not quite sure why when they arrive at Arsenal, they're just like completely washed at that point. And I just don't get why that is, whether it's Willian coming in at the beginning of the project or Sterling coming in to help finish the project. It's no matter what, we get the same result. So I'm not quite sure that that's the type of direction that I'd be trying to go in. He's not necessarily super quick. He's a technical player. He, can come central. He can play on both sides. He's, tricky, whatever. He can score goals. But how is that going to translate to the faster league? I know he was in the Premier League before, but he's a much different player than he was back then. I mean, he's been gone for like, 7 years or something like that. So the Zane news is a little bit concerning just because there's no clear, like definitive like we are getting a left winger or we're getting a level raising winger. It very much so read from James McNicholas's like little briefing that they're not going to get Rodrigo and they're not going to get Nico Williams. So now they're looking at Zane. And I would love for that to be more of like a third signing because I do think that we need three attackers. Like if Arsenal were really trying to be serious, they would bring in three attackers, at least two forwards a striker and a winger and an attacking mid, or two wingers and a striker. But we know that that's not how they operate. Arsenal don't ever get more than what they need. They get just about enough or not enough at all. And so the Sane signing is um because you can't get Nico Williams. And this whole thing about if you can't get Nico Williams, then you just kind of get nothing or some washed guy. Um, is something that's becoming a little bit more like frequent with Arsenal. And I'm not quite liking that policy. I just think that good clubs know how to pivot to good options, after their number one option is not available. And the hemming and hawing because Isak was your number one option, and now you're not quite sure about Sesko or Gyokeres. And hemming and hawing on Nico Williams, and then not getting Nico Williams means we end up with Sterling, and then now it could potentially end up that it's Sane. That's concerning, So yeah, because Nico Williams at this stage for me is not coming to Arsenal. And the reason why I say that is because now there's rumors that he's going to sign a new deal at Bilbao. He wants £300,000 a week, and the release clause is going to be like £60,000 a week. Or no, sorry, not £60,000, 60 million pounds. And that's just a big outlay on top of knowing that the outlay for Sesko is going to be more than what it was last summer. And Arsenal still want to get a goalkeeper and still want to get a defender. So Nico Williams is probably just about out of the equation. From what we're reading, they're slowly getting to the point of it's not happening. Rodrigo is a difficult deal to do financially. Nico Williams is a difficult deal to do financially. They're already kind of letting us know through the James McNicholases and the David Ornsteins that it's not happening. So why does that mean that it has to go to Sane though? So it's, listen, there's no excuse not to get a winger. You must get a winger, but it can't be Sane. Why can't we get a young and up and coming winger? Somebody that, has their whole life ahead of them. Why is it always the wash guy? I don't want to say that Sane is washed 100% because I don't think he's quite in the Sterling category yet, but he's not far from it, so it's rough, right now, in terms of what we're hearing from the talking heads. And again, the last two windows have kind of gone this way. They start off big saying that Arsenal are looking at the Michael Olises and the Isaks. Then it goes from Isak and Michael Olise to Nico Williams and Sesko to no Sesko and no Nico Williams to Sterling. So we know that they start to kind of test the waters with lowering the expectations for the window. And it's already dropped off from, Nico Williams down to Sane. So yeah, Marco says, I'm not panicking about Rodrigo yet. This is what Madrid does. They did the same with Ozil and Odegaard. They never feel the need to sell quickly. I've actually pretty much discarded the idea of Rodrigo. I just don't think that if they have to spend a lot on Sesko, they won't. Whatever money we have left is not going to be enough to spend almost 100 million on Rodrigo. Or at least 100 million euros, whatever that ends up being in pounds, is probably more than what we can put out there. So yeah, Yo-Yo says Martinelli out and Sane in isn't impressive. Lawrence Bailey says, I feel like no one really knows what Arsenal are doing. Just Arsenal seem to keep everything indoors. People are just guessing out there. Listen, but all we have, I feel like when we don't hear what we want to hear, it's always, we don't know what's happening. There's probably more happening behind the scenes. It's just, it's just James McNicholas coming out of his ass saying things that he doesn't know anything about. But if he were to say that we were getting Isak and Nico Williams, everybody would say we know everything because he's so reliable. Whenever they're saying things that we don't like to hear, it's always those people are not reliable, and I'm just like, we can only utilize the information that we're being given. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that Arsenal are not in a financial situation or don't want to put out an outlay for Nico Williams. They've known this for 2 seasons now. They've known Nico Williams, 60 million release clause, 300,000 pounds a week. They've known this. So if they haven't acted on it yet, it's probably just the case that they don't want to spend that money, So anytime that we don't hear what we want to hear, everybody is unreliable and has no clue and just is pulling shit out of their ass. But if they say that we're getting Isak and Olise, you guys are like, oh, well, that makes sense. It's either they know what they're talking about or they don't. Life of BOJ says January we were told they were working hard. Exactly. Owen says history tells us any news to damper expectations is usually correct. Nuances says Arteta blew most of the budget. Club clearly doesn't want to spend anymore. Blessing says another day of nothingness. Jonathan says such a pathetic club, useless. And Mbasa says won't be surprised if this window is Sesko, Zubimendi, Sane free transfer. I mean, um, how would you guys genuinely feel if it ended up being that? If it ended up being Sesko, Zane, and Zubimendi? Because again, Arsenal are still holding some of that money back for a defender, and a goalkeeper. So it could end up being that. How would you guys feel about that genuinely? Is it the worst? Because Gunnerblog did say if Arsenal end up getting a winger, they want it to be somebody that can play on both sides. And Zane definitely fills that requirement. I think that's also why they like Nico Williams too, because he can play on both sides quite well. So maybe it's the case that they feel he can do the same thing. He does fill those requirements. He's just not exciting, Arsenic says, not watching next season. Shamaria says, why is it so difficult for us to bring in attackers, but the defender we have no problems finding the money for? That's something that Arteta and them will have to answer, because the complete disregard for our attack over the last ever since Mikel has been here is a choice. It's not something that you can say is being pressed upon him. He's had quite a bit of autonomy over transfer windows over the last 5 seasons, and he has bought 2 attackers. He's bought Trossard and Jesus, and that's been a choice. He hasn't had to do that. He continuously buys defenders, specifically left backs and goalkeepers, but we can't get beyond that into wingers and strikers. And now that we've gotten to that stage, it just feels like, and this is what it feels like to me. If you don't feel like this is what's happening, that's fine. But it kind of feels like if they can't get the number one option, meaning they couldn't get Isak and they're not able to get Nico Williams, they'd rather go with nothing than go with a different option, and I'm not quite sure why that is, but they're really afraid to just buy in attacking areas. Osmond says, to be fair, the defense first recruitment has turned us from a team that gets smacked up and humiliated by top teams to no one that doesn't lose to the top teams. He was right to build from the back. I think I don't really think people are saying that building from the back was a problem, and I think when the criticism around not buying attackers comes in, people do refer to the complete opposite. Well, so you just want to get smacked up and, you don't want to have a strong defense. You want to be where you were with Wenger. And that's not necessarily what I'm saying. We've had a really good defense since the 2022-2023 season. We have. Fundamentally, that defense and that team didn't get smacked up. We lost one game where we got slapped, and that was against City, and we lost 4-1. No other game in that season did we get slapped up. So for the last 3 seasons, we've had a really strong defense, but in the last 2 summer windows, we've neglected to improve the attack, even though we have that strong defense. So what I'm saying is you've spent 3 summers, the summer where they brought in like Gabriel and Thomas Partey, the summer where they brought in Ben White and Ramsdale and Tomiyasu. And then the next summer, when you brought in Timber and Raya and Declan Rice, you spent 3 summers building from the back. You were gifted Saliba, and you also brought in Ben White. I forgot about him. So you spent 3 summers building that core group of the defense. But now we've gone 2 summers past there where you've added Calafiori, who what did he really add anything, because he was really injured the entire time? You know what I mean? So it's not that I don't care. Like, I love that we built that really strong defense. Like, it's great. It's helped us. It actually has maintained our level because our attack has been so poor. But you've had 2 windows where you could have actually focused more of the money on, because whether Calafiore is here or not, we would have had the best defense in the league last year. Like, we would have, you know. So it's time to pivot away from that and start going towards the attack. But the same level of investment and aggressiveness that we've taken to bring in a Raya or a Timber or a Declan Rice or White or whatever is just not the same energy that we're getting for the attack. And I don't think you can really refute that, you know? Like I love the defense and I don't begrudge Mikel for starting there, but we're almost overcooked there now. Like we're almost like way well beyond that where it's like the back looks incredibly different than the front when it comes to the talent level and the level of depth. So it's time to move on from that. Burmy says Sesko potential and initially Havertz will start. Sane, talented, but is he a game changer? Zubi, good signing to support the attack, but elite attackers needed to score goals. Demore says, so once July starts, they get us excited with Zubi in the new kits. Towards the end of July, they spice it up with Sesko, and we are excited. Then they dampen our spirits with Zane. Same story. Blessing says top heavy, unbalanced squad. Jonathan says attackers usually have egos. Jess, he can't manage those. And listen, I really I'm not 100% on the he doesn't like egos thing. But I do think like maybe I could see where that's coming from. Like really good attackers tend to have egos, and maybe he's just like not into it. I don't know if I'm 100% sold on that's the reason why he's not bringing in attackers, but not bringing in attackers is not helping his case. Victor says, I get Arteta has gotten a decent amount of money, but why are we the only club that gets held back so much by some poor signings? Havertz, Marino, we haven't spent insane amounts, crap owners. Owen says, remember, it was holding at the back when we got slapped, then even addressed that by still buying defenders. It's like, to me, there's nothing wrong with buying the defenders. It's just we're beyond that now, where if he had bought an attacker after the first season that we challenged instead of Havertz, and then the next summer we would have gotten the Nico Williams and the Sesko, we'd be 3 attackers further along, than we are now. And we probably wouldn't be having these conversations. We probably wouldn't have had a situation where all of our attack was out at once and we didn't have any good attackers to step in or was already starting in front of them. So we've had time to build this attack and we haven't done it, so yeah. Ilmatic says Arteta coaches caution, managers like Enrique coach fearlessness and freedom. The difference. Nuances says doesn't matter who we sign, Havertz gets shoehorned in. Marco says Xhaka had an ego. It's not about egos. It's about buying into the approach Xhaka did. Yeah, I don't really know why we're so reluctant and why it's taking so long to get it going, like yeah, it's just long. It's just long. Meanwhile, I'm getting DMs from weirdos saying be a better journalist and not be negative about Arsenal, and I'm just like I just feel like trying to attack me or attack AFTV or whoever because the club is not really doing, what they're supposed to do is not really my problem. Like I really don't feel bad about being disappointed by this season, you know. We haven't had positive news on the summer window yet, so what the fuck is there to be happy and excited about? Like where are my goosebumps? If you don't like the content, go somewhere else. This is coming from some German outlets. Leroy Sané is still rejecting Bayern's current offer. However, from Bayern's perspective, the door remains open. Vincent Company, in particular, values Sané's qualities and would like to keep him. In any case, one of the current wingers would have to leave for a new star signing to be brought in. This is, they want to keep him. He doesn't like the offer. And I also am not a big fan of bringing in players that were desperate to stay where they were at. I feel like that was kind of Willian's problem, is he was like mourning the death of his Chelsea career, and they wouldn't give him the amount of years he wanted. And so he spent his whole Arsenal career being like devastated, and he didn't give us his best, so it's best that we stay away from this, to be honest. Shamaria says Zane will down tools if he comes. Do not bring him in. Life of BOJ says we need to have shame helping him negotiate his contract. Carl says Zane stays at Bayern. Hopefully he does. I really don't. I mean, again, we have held talks in some capacity, so we are interested in him in some capacity. I don't know exactly what that is, but yeah, Jonathan says we love saving players. Don't be surprised if we go for Grealish. Market opportunity. There's no way Arteta can go for Grealish. He's, no offense to him, but he's like drunk all the time, so Arteta likes soldiers, and Grealish is not that. I cannot see us going for him. Damon says Arsenal are not buying Zane. He is using the media to get leverage on Bayern for more money. He complains about the weather a few years ago and to come back now. Well, he'll either have to accept what Bayern are offering him or hit the road, Jack, because I don't know if Bayern are going to give him what he's looking for. Brap says there's a lack of urgency every window. Keenan says Trossard is aging, Martinelli has death stalled, and Ethan is developing. We should be bringing in 2 top-class wingers minimum. I agree. I don't really even understand the conversation around just bringing in 1 winger. I don't know why we can't push for more, why it's always we just want to have just enough. Just enough. Let's go a little bit harder, Let's overdo it just for once and see, what happens. If maybe having more will give us what we need instead of just about having enough, So I would have liked 2 wingers, to be honest, but I know that's too much to ask. We'll probably just get the 1, if that, and I think the options are also getting less and less we're really early in the window, and basically Rodrigo's out, Leao's out, Nico Williams is out. Those are like 3 major ones right there. So, who can they? And I'm not for this Gordon shit either. I don't think we'd have the money to get him, but I don't want him. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know people are trying to hype him up, but I do not understand the obsession with these guys from the Prem, these Gordons and these Semenyos. Bruh. Surely not. Surely not. I really would love us to get these, these talents in these other leagues. Like, I don't know, these overrated Prem players just give me the ick. Gordon is just not. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Maybe you guys like it, but I don't. I don't like Gordon. He does not say Arsenal. It really does give Mikel, though, because he likes these overrated kind of Prem proven talent things, but I'm not into it. I'd rather us go for somebody a little bit more, I don't know, just better. I don't know if you guys rate him or not. I don't. I just don't. Arsenic says Barcola make Arsenal French again. Carl says he doesn't have the aura for Arsenal. Good player for Newcastle FC. John says we don't act like a big club on transfers. Cunha and Bomo. Shamara says he's meh. We need better. It's just he feels like somebody that is at his final destination. I'm not sure that he needs to just move to another like is Newcastle not his no offense to them because obviously they're a really good team and they're a Champions League level team, but is Newcastle not his level? Like, why would we spend 80 million on Gordon? And if we have 80 million, why are we not knocking down PSG's door to try to get, Barcola and try to like snatch him away? Why are we not going to Bilbao and saying we have the money for Nico Williams? Why would we spend that on Anthony Gordon? I just don't get it, but it could just be I don't rate him. Um, but I'm also like, yeah, it's something about the prem proven kind of guys that just don't do it for me. Um, especially like Semenyo as well. Like he's not good enough either. It would be so stupid. Clement says no to Barcola. We need to get Gyokeres or Osimhen as a striker. Sesko don't move me at all. 13 goals in the Bundesliga last season isn't impressive. 20-goal striker and needed along with hold up play. Well, nobody will touch Osimhen with a 10-foot pole, which I think is a pretty good indication that, there's something there. I don't know what to tell you guys about the Osimhen thing, but like literally nobody really wants him outside of Saudi clubs and Galatasaray. I think that that's a huge red flag, especially for somebody who is so good. But Gyokeres, I mean, of course I'd take Gyokeres. I do think that people that don't want Sesko, it's like all of the context you would apply to another player that you really want, you don't apply that to Sesko. He has over 100 goals as a under 21 or 21-year-old. He just turned 22. He was playing in a side that was really poor and then also doesn't play to his strengths. So and he overperforms his XG as well. He's he's not Premier League proven, he's Champions League proven. He's just a young player. And again, like for people that are so interested in players like Barcola or Doué and players like this, they didn't have impressive metrics when they left Rennes or they left Lille or wherever the fuck they came from. They're the types of players that Arsenal fans would not want. Also, Isak as well, because the numbers were not impressive, but they have all the tools to be the right types of players for us. When it comes to Sesko, I just don't see how people don't see it. I just think they look at the stat and they're like, not 20 goals. It's not going to blah, blah, blah. But that's just me. And saying no to Barcola as well. Like Barcola would be the number one choice if he was actually available. Jonathan says, let Barcola lose the ball once under Arteta. We also have to get to a point too where losing the ball is no longer a crime. Like, you know what I mean? Like we've gotten to the stage as a fan base and also like maybe this is under like Arteta where losing the ball is a cardinal sin. Like do not lose the ball under like, and you watch other teams play. Yes, they try to keep possession and stuff, but when they try things, try to, get past their man or do a move or, put through like a risky pass between the lines. Sometimes it gets cut out and the other team gets the ball. But at Arsenal, it's like, do not lose the ball or we will die. That got to go. That's got to go next season. I'm so sorry because you cannot be a good attack-minded side and be like deathly afraid of losing the ball. It doesn't work like that. Good attacking sides back themselves to try things a million times and then it'll happen once or twice and then you'll score the goal. But they back themselves to win the ball back. We're like the only team in the world that I look at. It's like we are white knuckling the ball. And if one of our players loses the ball, the timeline loses their shit. And I'm just like, hello? you know Blessing says UCL proven. Taku says Arteta should change it to you can lose the ball in certain positions and situations. I just feel like there should be a little bit more creative. Players lose the ball more than anybody. They lose possession. Like I do not like when people use possession and also who loses possession as a stat to beat attacking players with. Like somebody like Bruno Fernandes gets a lot of that. Like he loses the ball more than like any other player. And I'm like, that's because he's probably maybe too much of this type of player, but the reason why he has so many goals and so many assists is because he tries things. Maybe he does it when he shouldn't, but for the most part, Like, you can't stop a player that's creative from trying those things, and sometimes it doesn't come off, but using possession, like, of course you're going to keep the ball more than anybody else if you don't pass it forward, and you pass it back all the time. So I just think, like, I would love for that to go away just a little bit, because it does feel like it's becoming a little bit of a pattern where if we lose the ball, it is carnage, and it shouldn't be like that. um Mata says, although every time we lost the ball this season, it ended up in the back of our net. Well, that's up to the defense, because as much as our defense didn't like concede a lot, they did lower their standards at certain points, and we're giving up some soft goals here and there, but it happens, and we still ended up with what, we were like 10 goals clear of everyone else in terms of conceding goals. Like, it's fine. You can lose the ball here and there. Victor says, fans will say we should be more attacking and creative, and then in the same breath scream when we concede or transition or lose the ball. Yeah. I mean, you want somebody, and we'll get into alternatives for the wing position if Nico Williams and these players are not available. But I implore you to watch, like, truly watch, like, full games, or either comps that show every action for some of these players that people really like, the Shirkies, the Xavi Simmonses, those types of players. They lose the ball quite a bit. Y'all wouldn't like that shit, but it's also an Arteta thing. I think Arteta is also afraid to lose the ball. Samuel says, for a club that goes forward very deep, losing the ball is not it. Both Pep and Arteta doesn't like losing the ball. World Boss says, hey, Jess, hope we really do a top striker and a winger. Is Berta the guy? I don't know. We'll wait and see if Berta's the guy. He's really, I mean, there's nothing tangible to really show for the window just yet. The window just opened though, so we shall see. But um, like, we'll just have to see. This also came out from Ben Jacobs like 2 hours ago. He said Arsenal want to sign Benjamin Sesko for 70 million euros or less. If Leipzig show flexibility, there's a high chance that it will progress in the next few days. Arsenal have been in contact with Leipzig over the past 3 days, and Sesko is somebody that a couple of days late a couple of months later has somehow gone from 50 million to now them wanting a package worth almost 100 million, and that's just obnoxious and ridiculous. And so I think, as long as, because I think they really do want to sell him, because Leipzig do need to sell at this stage, I feel. And then they kept him an additional season because I think they anticipated this season going a lot better for them, and it didn't. So now they need to sell him, and they know they're not going to get that big package. So from Arsenal's perspective, I feel like as long as nobody else comes in for Sesko, we have leverage to take down the fee, especially if we always have, like, in our back pocket that we can just go get Gyokeres if this doesn't work out, and whatever it's going to cost for him. But ultimately, if you really do want Sesko, just get him. And maybe that's why it's taking a little bit longer, is because we don't want to have to end up paying more than we need to if there's nobody really knocking the door down for Sesko. They want to sell, they're going to sell him. So maybe that's why it's taking a little bit longer, which I can kind of understand. So we'll end up with either one of the two of them probably, and then that will inform what we do for the winger, maybe. I don't know. I'm reading between the lines. Also, Manchester City are monitoring Xavi Simons' situation. He is a plan B to Ryan Cherki. We should be all over the Xavi Simons thing. We should be all over it. I feel if the likes of Leao, Rodrigo, Nico Williams, Barcola are not available, Gittins, then you just need to go for somebody that raises the level. I look at our wing situation as trying to either upgrade on Trossard's profile or trying to upgrade on Martinelli's profile. Martinelli is more of our 1v1 quick winger, and then Trossard is more of the creative winger that can play multiple positions, the 10, the 9, and left wing. And we need to upgrade on, idealistically, I'd like to upgrade on both, but upgrade on at least one of them. And so Rodrigo or Xavi Simmons would be more of like the Trossard replacement, and a Nico Williams, Leao, those types would be more of a Martinelli replacement, in my opinion. If you can't get the Martinelli replacement slash upgrade, you still need to upgrade on that side. What I don't understand why we would not be talking to Leipzig about Xavi Simmons, because there's no reason for us not to be. You need a level raiser. Isn't David Dean's son his agent? We have an in there. We've been linked to him for about since he's like left PSV. We've been linked to him for a while now. He's a good creative player. You need to replace Fabio Vieira and ESR and what they added to the team. You need creativity that can exist on the left-hand side. You have Ethan and Max Dowman coming in on the right. You need somebody that exists on the left-hand side that can make that side more creative. Why not? Why wouldn't you go for him? He's right there. He's quite literally right there. He doesn't solve your pace problem, which I know some people are like very adamant about getting pace, but I would not get Xavi Simmons because I'm just looking for a pacey player. Because if you give me Semenyo talking about some pace, or Adeyemi talk about some pace, but the other option is Xavi Simmons, I'm going to take Xavi Simmons because he's just a better player, So um, Arsenal should be talking to him. My biggest fear is he's going to end up at a rival, and at that stage, then pretty much all the like premier top quality attack minded players that are available are gone. Maybe Eze would be the only other option, but Arsenal seem allergic to him for some reason. You need to go get somebody in that's going to give you more creativity. He can play on the wing. You move Trossard on instantly, and then you just go into next season with Sesko, Xavi Simmons, and Saka as your front three and call it a day. 80 or sorry. Victor says, Jess, we don't got the cash to go for players like Xavi Simmons. We're broke as fuck. We're just penny pinching now. What happened to the money from the Champions League? What happened to the money that you didn't spend last season? I'm not trying to hear broke. We're not broke. We just don't want to spend. 80 says Gordon has pace and creativity. Arsenic says Simmons is a baller, would take him or Eze. Foxy says, was saying Xavi Simmons was the guy to get back in 2019 when he was a free. I repeat it again, when he was free in 2022. Now people pay attention and want to pay 70 million. It's insane. Well, we never really do things when it's good to do. We always wait. So that's the price that you pay. But you kind of do need to push the boat out for one of these attack-minded players. If the winger is not available, there's just really no excuse to not go for one of these players, I feel. You really need to get some creativity in the team, for sure, especially on that left-hand side. Yo-Yo says Xavi Simmons looks up to Saka. I know that much. The Dutchman is a Wenger player. Arteta turned his back on fluid football a while ago. Well, he won't prosper with this style, so he needs to give that shit up. You can be physical, you can be like not a pushover and be defensively solid without hams like being so frigid and rigid. When I hear Arsenal fans start talking about how fun it would be to see Sesko and Havertz playing together in some two-man forward line, I'm like, this is just not the football club. I do not recognize my club. That's just not it. It's just not. I'm sorry. I don't want to play spicy Stoke. It's get some technical players in there. I mean, you're adding Zubimendi, which I still maintain. He's going to give us more of that technical play in midfield. He's going to be more of a Vitinha type of player for us in that DM role, which is going to be great for us because we need that tempo control, a little bit of, he's going to give us a little, yeah. But you still need to add some more across the pitch anyway. You need to have somebody that, can step in for Odegaard right away. You need to have somebody that can play with Odegaard when we need to break down deep blocks. You need to have somebody that can play above Martinelli or instead of Martinelli. Like, you need options, and he has those options, you know? Let's see. Nolan says Rodrigo, Gyokeres, Saka. How does that sound? Music. I just don't see that being what we go for, because Rodrigo, I just don't think that Real Madrid are going to let him go. And yeah, so and then Gyokeres, we know Sesko is probably the number one chance. So yeah. Um, let's see. Blaze says, we are not broke. It's just Cronkies want to have the gimmick that we don't have money. I can't believe some Arsenal fans defended our owners. I mean, we definitely don't have, I don't think we're broke at all. I agree with Blaze. I don't think we're broke. I just feel the Cronkies don't want to spend the money. They have gotten to the stage where we're a consistent top four side, so that that money is coming in, and they don't feel like they need to invest what they were investing when we were outside of top four anymore. And that's a problem, because everybody around us, no matter if they're in Champions League or not, are spending like £200,000 a week, a month, not a month, sorry, a year or a summer. City will continuously spend that money. Liverpool will spend that money. Everybody spends that money. And so we need to continue to spend. You can't just stop spending. It just doesn't work, especially when you fuck up and make mistakes like we have been doing, so you need to continue to spend. But it just feels like the money is kind of stopped coming in. Not that we don't have it, but they don't want to spend it, and that's concerning. Jonathan says Cronkies are loving life right now. Damon says Arsenal are not broke. We are just a little worse than Pool in spending money. Shamara says if we wanted, we could spend 300 million. We have the money for days. We have money. Like, we have money. They continuously put out PR about how, we're the most profitable club and we're one of the biggest clubs, and, we're making this amount of money, and our squad value and all that kind of stuff. But that is not replicated or reflected in how we spend, especially in the last couple windows. And so they had that really big window after we first challenged. We really, I think, made a huge error in not bringing in at least somebody that could truly replace Xhaka and upgrade upon him, or an attacker. You had the opportunity to do both. There were plenty of eights available and plenty of attackers available. Xavi Simmons was available in that window. Kudus was available in that window. We decided not to do any of that shit. You know who we bought instead. And then the next window was it was just a travesty. So we have money. They just don't want to spend it. Samuel says, please, even Man U spending money. Jonathan says, highest tickets in London, merge KSC loving life. Taku says, this 300 million business is a farce. Blessing says, all this is genuinely futile. The summer and next year will be another year of failure. Lee Reed says, Arsenal are so slow at transfers. Geez. Chris says, revenue-wise, we're in the top 10 in the world. Why does anybody think we're broke? We're not broke. We are not broke. We just act broke because the club doesn't want to spend the money, and I'm not quite sure how they expect us to stay in the top four without money. I don't see how they expect it. It's wild to me. Newcastle are the richest club in the Prem. They will continue to spend. Chelsea are spending. Everyone's spending. So I don't know how they expect us to stay. Kwame says, hi, Jess. You are so lovely without your glasses. Damn, I feel like that was like a backhanded compliment, but fair enough. We will take it. Pat says, rich, stay rich. My not spending money. Victor says, I know we aren't broke. I was trying to say we act broke. These owners are stingy bums. Yo-Yo says, oh no, you guys are talking to each other. Arsenic says, if we end up with Sesko, Zane, and Zubimendi, we should protest. They'll never protest, because probably the main group of people that attack me online are the match going fans. They're always talking about how the online fan base is so annoying and they just don't understand, and they didn't enjoy the season, but they just don't get it. I enjoy the season. I enjoy Arsenal. We're in a great place. I'm more happy at the club now than I was under Emery and the back end of Wenger. The online fans are just horrendous. They just don't get it. The match day going fans, which are pretty much the only part of the fan base that can ignite change, like online fans, we could do a little bit, but ultimately, the people that are the butts in seats are the only ones that can really ignite change. They're the only ones, and they are very happy with where we are, whether it's apathy or mild like okayness, or genuinely happy. They are not in a place where they are going to try to revolt or anything. And so as long as they're there clapping and buying merch and shit, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm not telling them how to be fans. I'm not saying pushing them to do it or blaming them. I'm just saying that they do feel connected to the club like they haven't in a long time, and they like things the way that they are. So they're kind of okay. There's like a small group that I think are not happy that made that known when Arteta was doing his speech, but there's still more of a majority that feel good about what we're doing. And so, yeah, the if we sign Zubimendi and Sesko and Sane, there won't be any revolt, there won't be any protesting. It'll just be either apathy or people will just go along with the get along, and it just is what it is. Keenan says Rodrigo and Gonzalo Ramos or Sesko and Semenyo. Really? Oh. I don't know. I really don't like those options. I guess Sesko and Semenyo, but I mean, it's like, what would you rather have somebody push you off of a cliff or stab you in the back? Like, neither. um, Goatman says there's no Sane talks currently, I believe. Jonathan says 100%, whichever one has Rodrigo. Boy says Sesko, Matoma, Zubimendi, Hato, and Simmons run at Arsenal. I mean, I would love a summer like that. And honestly, that should be the type of summer that we're having. When they talk about having a big summer and be excited and goosebumps and shit, that's would give me goosebumps. Like, but it'd probably be Hato is going to be very expensive. I don't know if we're going to be able to get him, but probably be like Sesko Zubimendi and some left wing. I don't know who, but I would love to just see us go big once. Once. Will says, Jess, would you take Mateta and then buy the best striker available next summer? Oh, Mateta. Probably unpopular opinion, but I'd still probably just go with Sesko. I'm not as low on Sesko as other people. I've kind of explained it in multiple streams already. It's really difficult for me not to be excited about signing who like the striker that will be the best number 9 in the world in the next 2-3 seasons. And so if you're not going to go get Gyokeres, who's like the only ready-made that is kind of like the done kind of like finished article type of thing, then go for Sesko. I do like Mateta. I just don't know if I believe that he's the right guy for us, but I guess, I do like him, maybe as like a backup, you know. Let's see. Keenan says Ramos has 24 GA in 1990s. I don't care. I would be so honest with you right now. I don't he's just not somebody that I want at Arsenal. Sorry. Do you guys want him at Arsenal? People are saying Zubimendi deal is off. I haven't seen that, but maybe it is. but I don't think it is. I haven't seen anything about it. John says it's not guaranteed that Sesko will be the best in the next 2, 3 years. I pray Arsenal get Gyokeres right now. It's not. It's not guaranteed, but I do think that that's what he is going to be. But fair enough, whatever. I do feel like you just need one other big team to go after Sesko and people to start changing their tune. I think because we're kind of like the only ones going after him right now. Arsenal fans tend to only really get super gassed about players that other people are interested in. But he just has all the elements of the type of player that in the next 2, 3 seasons he will be the guy. He's very similar to Isak in that way that the stats don't say it, but yeah, the ball striking, the pace, the tech, the nose for goal, the athleticism. He has all the stuff, the aerial ability. All he really needs is there's nothing missing from his game. He overperforms his XG. He's basically in hell at Leipzig. They don't play to his strengths at all, but he still scored a shit ton of goals for them. Um, it's just there. Like he's just the next Isak, and I feel like it's pretty obvious, but um, yeah. But I get it. I get that people don't want to wait. Um, but I just I just think he's that guy, man. Um, let's see. Jonathan says, "What happens to Fabio Vieira and Lakanga? That's 60 million right there." I mean, hopefully, that's where Berta comes in. He's meant to be the guy to sell and get us good money, so we should sell them both. New Music says, "I don't understand how to feel we can put all of our hopes on only one new goal scorer." Amina says, "I think the fans are skeptical a bit. I think they need a player that's going to hit the ground running. They don't want to wait and see a player's progress." And I totally understand that. I get that. I would just say that, you know, for me, I don't have a big aversion to high quality young talent. Um, I wouldn't want to put the future of the club in Eddie Nketiah's hands when he was not good and Arteta was banking on him becoming something special for no reason. But, like the Barcolas, like the Doués, like the Isaks, these players that clearly had something and it was clear to see when you're actually watching them and they didn't have the stats, they ended up going to teams and regardless of whether they were young or whatever, they had it. PSG, their whole lives changed when they got rid of Mbappe and they brought in players like Barcola and Doué. They're like 19 and 20 years old. So, you know, personally for me, it's not really about age per se. It's about what the tools in the toolbox are. Like, what do they have that we're lacking? Sesko has a lot of things that we're lacking, but Arsenal fans need something to like feel like it's gonna happen for sure. And I get that. I'm not as thing about that. I'm not as like, it has to be that. Um, but if we got Sesko, I'd want the winger to be maybe a little bit more experienced. That would be my only caveat. But young players make big changes in teams all the time. They make them better all the time. I feel like we're a little bit obsessed with experience and stuff because we're afraid of a project, but yeah, it is what it is. It's cool. Boy says still people still talking about age while Real Madrid signed 4-year-olds. John says, but the way Arsenal is moving this summer is embarrassing. I'm so annoyed. Keenan says Sesko's 67 past completion. He is like Havertz with bricks for feet. I don't think our transfer team can profile properly. I mean, it's not our transfer team is not the only ones that have said that they feel like he's the next big thing out there, but like a 67% pass completion for a striker doesn't matter to me because passing is not what I'm looking for my striker. I don't want another Jesus. I want somebody who overperforms their XG, hits through the ball, is great aerial threat, is fast. He has all those things. So a pass completion rate for a striker doesn't, go look at like Holland is not somebody that you're looking at for pass completion, but he puts the ball in the back of the net. That's all that really matters to me. I'm not looking for a Jesus. I'm looking for a goal scorer. Josh says fans who doubt Mikel fans who doubt Mikel outthink getting Gyokeres and him failing will lead to Mikel out, while getting Sesko and him failing doesn't give Mikel out fans a reason for him to be sacked. Let me read that again. Fans who doubt Mikel thinking getting Gyokeres and him failing will lead to Mikel out, while getting Sesko and him failing doesn't give Mikel out fans a reason for him to get sacked. Okay, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. And I'm like, I just feel like if you're not a big fan of Mikel, then I think you do want him to get the players that he wants so that there's no guys or anything in front of like no confusion on whether or not it's on the transfer team holding his hands behind his back or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think that's how I would be thinking about it if I was like desperate for Mikel to go. But I just really like Sesko, so it's gonna be really difficult for me to not want Sesko, so, but that's a personal thing for me. Boy says, "Why signing Sesko, gifting Arteta this magical extra time from the fan base?" I don't know. Um, I don't know. I feel like it's if we get a younger player, then that means that he's gonna have extra time, and I don't know. People have these theories or whatever. Um, so yeah. Victor says, "What's Holland's pass completion? Using pass completion against a forward is new. It just doesn't. It's not something that I'd be looking at for a forward. I look at shot creating actions. I look at their XG and how they're performing against it. I look at if they have the physical qualities that make that you can't buy. You can't buy speed. You can't buy height. You can't buy agility. You can't buy aerial presence. Those things are you either have them or you don't. If you have X factor and the weirdest thing about Sesko is that he actually has good tech despite being so tall. He's like 5 or 6'5", but he can still twinkle toes by people at times. He's not Ekatike and these guys, but he's also not a Lukaku type, no offense to Lukaku, but he doesn't have 20 goals, so people can't see beyond it, and that's fair, and I accept that. Like I'm not here to I just am saying what I'm seeing, but if you don't like it, then it is what it is. But yeah, his pass completion is 66%, Sesko. But his successful take-ons is an 89th percentile. Progressive carries are quite good as well. And I'm telling you that the system that they play in does not suit him at all, but he's still able to score quite a few goals and overperform his XG, which is really, really good. Looking at Holland, let's see what his pass completion is. Holland's pass completion is 68%. So Sesko's is 66%, and Holland's is 68%. So yeah, I mean, also like Holland's touches in the attacking penalty area are in the 91st percentile. He takes about 6.37 touches in the box every game. Now going back to Sesko, which is one of my other big things with him, is he's not in the box enough. His touches in the attacking penalty area are in the 12th percentile. So he's overperforming his XG and not taking any touches in the box. This is what I'm saying. Like, there's just, to me, just too much in there where it's like you can't just look at it and say, well, he scored 13 goals, so that means he's shit. But fair enough. Victor says Sesko has immense potential. He genuinely has all the ingredients and just needs a manager system for him to cook. Yes, football isn't always so complex, but it isn't as black and white as GA, which I totally agree with. Jagoon says, as one of Havertz's major faults is his ball striking, which Sesko solves. He's also less awkward on the ball than Havertz. Havertz looks so clumsy on the ball. But Sesko, obviously, he's not Jesus on the ball, and I think also because we're so used to false nines and we're so like the last good striker that we had or striker that we liked was Jesus. It's if they don't have the twinkle toes and they're not a dribbler, then they're just so bad on the ball. They were talking about somebody who's 6'5", so you need to adjust your expectations for somebody who's much bigger. Jesus is not really a striker. Like, he's more of just a forward. So I think he's quite good on the ball. Like, I'm okay with the Sesko signing as long as we still get the winger. I'm gonna accept that Havertz is gonna start. He's gonna start no matter who comes in, by the way. So it just is what it is. But you know, it's not what people want, and I'm okay with that. Like everybody has their own opinions. Barry says Sesko and a raid on Villa, if possible, for Rogers and Watkins would be good. Cherry on top would be Zubimendi and Simmons. I mean, do you guys still want Watkins? Like, how do you guys feel about the Watkins thing? Because saying he's not off the table, which is what Gunnar Block said, is like, okay, but hold on, guys. Sorry. Hell is that? Anyways, but yeah, uh, let's see. Wage demands may have priced Gyokeres out. According to Simon Phillips, Gyokeres representatives are pushing for a weekly salary of £300,000 a week. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think Gyokeres is worth £300,000 a week? If that's true, because there's a chance that that's not true. Um, but yeah, what do you guys think about the wages? Do you feel like because um, there's still a little thing in the back of my mind that's concerned about the goals translating. I think they will. Like I'm thinking about like 60% of me, 70% of me feels like they are going to translate. And then there's like the little inkling that's like, yeah, but it's probably, it probably won't, so what do we do? But £300,000 a week is a lot of money. But if you feel like he's the guy long term, surely a prime age player, Gyokeres, you'd give him that, right? So yeah, Anton Dunn says he doesn't make half of that right now, 150 tops. Hell no. Let's get it. Let's let him go elsewhere if that's real. Jagoon says no, but we should give it to him anyway. No. New Music says Arteta will definitely throw the bag at him the way Havertz was put on a pedestal this season. Yes. Boy says Gyokeres should be demanding £350,000 a week. £300,000 a week is cheeky. Darren says Zubimendi is not signing. That dude is a huge something. He's not leaving Spain. Victor says Watkins 30 to 40 million isn't bad as a second forward to accommodate a Sesko. Yo-Yo says turning Watkins down in the winter just to sign him in the summer would be peak Arsenal. It would be. Yeah, I mean, I think Gyokeres. Here's my thing: is if you want Gyokeres at the club, you should have no problem wanting him to have these wages because you should believe that he's going to be the game changer. Because here's the thing: you can't not want Sesko because Sesko is not the guy and he doesn't have the goals, and be desperate for Gyokeres, but then not want to give him the wages associated with the type of player that you think he's going to be. Anybody who wants Gyokeres should be like so happy to give him those wages because essentially if he's who you say he's going to be, then he's going to be one of your best players and he's going to change our fortunes. So I feel like if you want Gyokeres at the club, you should feel confident giving him pretty much the highest wages at the club. If you don't believe that he should get those wages, then you need to ask yourself, how do you believe that Gyokeres is the guy, but you're not willing to give him the guy wages? I think that's a good question. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm not saying either neither here nor there, like where I really stand on it, because I feel like I would be comfortable giving him those wages, but because I feel like he is gonna get a lot of goals, but that's just me, because I also am feeling like when January rolls around, you need to snatch that 260 something thousand pounds away from Jesus and the number 9 and get him a new club, you know. Um, that's kind of where I'm at with that. So, yeah, but if you want him at the club, you should be confident giving him those wages, because those are the types of wages that you would give to the guy, you know. Boy says these men have no conviction when they say they want the club to sign a big player. Keenan says we are signing a backup to Havertz. We aren't going to Sesko more than 200,000 pounds a week. Yeah, I mean, like, and I would imagine that Sesko would get way less than that, which is cool. But then you have to offset that with the winger, I think for sure. So, yeah, I mean, there's a conundrum there, but yeah, I would probably I would give Gyokeres that money, because the only way that I'd want him at the club is if I truly believe he's going to be the guy that's gonna score 25 goals a season, you know? Victor says Gyokeres, Glazers backing up when they hear those wages, no balls. AD says, honestly, if it's true Zubimendi isn't coming, I would bring in Eze and move Rice back to the six. Joe says, exactly. Thank you, Jess. If he's the guy who's going to take us to, yeah, if he's going to be the guy that takes us to the next level, then you should feel confident giving him the money. Will says, Jesse, I think the true cause, look at his 26. This is his prime. He would want to take advantage of these years before 30, so he will ask for a big salary, same as Mbomo, who's asking for 200,000 pounds. Exactly. And I wouldn't expect Gyokeres to want nothing like low wages. This is his big move, potentially his last big contract. So he's going to want to go to somewhere where he's going to get, and I think Gyokeres also strikes me as the type of personality where he believes he's the guy. So wherever he goes, he's going to exude the, personality and the, of somebody that believes he's the guy. So he'd feel confident getting those wages. So again, there's no point in bringing in Gyokeres and, thinking he's going to give us 20 something goals a season and then not giving him the wages because he's the guy, so I'd give him those wages. I would. But because I'm also expecting to move Jesus on. Boy says, I see now. I would even give Williams 400,000 pounds, a real player, that one, wannabe scouts to know. Yeah, and I mean, big players get big wages, and we have kept our wage bill kind of tame. We have given some high wages in regards to like where our wage bill kind of sits, to players that aren't really living up to those wages. But in terms of in comparison to other top four sides, we are pretty on the lower scale. And so we could go higher for a player that's really, really worth it. Like I would love to give those types of wages to somebody like a Rodrigo. I would love to. Because I feel like he'd be worth it. But yeah. Let's see. Antonin says, Jess, he earns 39,000 pounds a week right now. So apparently, please relax. I mean, I don't really need to relax. Those are the wages that he's asking for, according to Simon Phillips. So I'm not like trying to give him those wages. I'm just saying if that's what he's asking for. And again, he is the guy that people feel like is going to take us to the promised land. So why would you not be comfortable giving him the wages associated with the type of player that's going to change your fortunes? So it's not about me relaxing. Those are the wages that he's asking for. So if you want him at the club, that's what you need to give him. New Music says Gyokeres has the fire in his eyes. I just feel he'll make the most out of being at a top club immediately. John says, do you think we have a chance to surpass City next season or Liverpool this summer is dull? No. Boss says we need Sane alongside another winger at left wing. Yeah, I don't think we're back to like John's thing. No, I don't. I just don't see us doing enough to really keep up with the teams that are already kind of ahead of us. The level of attacking talent that they have and the coaches that they have just mean that we would have to be perfect. And we're just not the type of team we don't have perfect seasons. We don't have perfect scenarios. If something will go wrong, it's going to go wrong. We still can't beat we still can't we still can't beat Aston Villa when we need to. So yeah, no, I think right now if I had to choose where we'd finish, it'd be third or fourth. And that's assuming that we get the striker and the winger and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. HFT says, I just want the people that want Sesko to not come back next season and cry that we finished third. That's all except we're going backwards next season. I mean, I'm not going to cry about the Sesko thing, to be honest. I mean, my expectation is if Sesko comes in, that he will still improve us, so it still is going to require Havertz to play games. But the combination of Sesko and Havertz would give us 25 goals at least, so I'm not tripping, as hard as other people about it. But, having Sesko doesn't necessarily mean you're going to come third either. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go backwards. It just means that Havertz is going to share time with him, and you're going to expect the two of them to come up with at least 10 or 15 goals each as they share that position. And I think they can. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but this whole Sesko 100% means that we're going to fail. Doesn't really, it's just is what it is. Give me 2 sex, people. I don't know why you sent that to me. Kwame says 1 Liverpool, 2 City, 3 Arsenal, 4 Newcastle, and 5 Forest. Unfortunately, Chelsea is going to be in there. So it's probably going to be some sort of fight between Liverpool City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Newcastle, and then there's always the inevitable person that pops up randomly. So, yeah. Jabu says, I'm really disappointed in the club. We always one in, one out. We lack attacking talent. Taku says, the fact that City got Reinders for 46 means AC Milan are open to selling at the right price. I would go ask for Leao. I mean, let's not get, City usually get lower fees because they pay more upfront. It's not necessarily that clubs just bend over for them, because I know that that's what it looks like, but they tend to get lower fees because they're have more cash on hand and we don't have that. So I don't necessarily feel like that means that they're having a fire sale. It's just they probably gave them better terms. Clubs are more, they would be happier to get a bigger fee up front, and then the overall fee be less than continuously get small payments, because that means that they can reinvest the money a lot quicker. So I wouldn't look at the Reinders fee and say that that means that there's this fire sale going on necessarily. I know they're selling the Teo Hernandez and that kind of stuff, but if we came for Leao, I still feel like it'd be quite a bit. And I think they did say he's untouchable. So even if it's Reinders going and Teo Hernandez, they're bringing in what it looks like Luka Modric, I don't necessarily feel like he's going to be available for any sort of cut price. But yeah, Yo-Yo says, I need serious ballers coming in for me to stomach another season of various set piece routines for Gabriel, as well as Kai, Sesko, back post headers, and Rice Marino box crashing. I can't do it. I really want us to go play some better football. I really cannot do the box crashing in the corners. Obviously, those are great, but I would like that in conjunction with some good football. But Arteta doesn't seem interested in bringing in ballers unless something changes. But when it comes to those 5 attacking positions, his 2 attacking midfielders and the 3 up front, he's kind of stuck with what he's got. So let's see, what he does. It's feeling Stokey. Taku says Reinders over Leao. Any Milan fan knows this. Samuel says Man City about to sign Reinders for 55 million. Very good deal for them. Inner Circle says between January 24th and January 26th, there are 5 transfer windows. Our net spend for those likely less than 200 million, meaning we average less than 40 million per window. When frick all with that. But he says, Jess, don't like that Arteta's trying to play us like Stoke City. I mean, I could stomach bad football if we're winning. I would take like a Conte or a Jose for one season if it guaranteed a Premier League, just so I could feel something. But if we're going to be in and around it and not really getting to the final, it's like, then at least play some good football for us to look at. And again, the teams that are really winning, the Barcelonas, the PSGs, the Liverpools, are all playing a better brand of football. They are playing aggressive attacking football. They are putting play, they're doing those things. They can have fun attack-minded players and still win shit. And I don't know why we have this idea that we need to be playing suffer ball in order to win. I don't know where Arteta got that from. Sorry, they're so silly, these 2 dogs. Say hello. Say hi. I'm shy. Keenan says this box crashing and corner merchanting has got to be the worst football I've witnessed at Arsenal. Arsenal wants Esco for 70 million or less. There's been progress in the last few days. I did say that from Ben Jacobs. Brian Holiday says, would Kai have been a good signing? Let's say if we signed him for 40 million and let's say 200,000 pounds a week. That's a good question. I think he would be less of a problem then, but I just think him being here in general, when you had 65 million to spend, 65 million is a lot of money for a club like Arsenal to go spend on a good midfielder or a really good attacker. And so I think just in general, it's a suspect signing that we've kind of made work, but ultimately doesn't solve anything. So yeah, I just would rather us have spent it differently altogether, but that's just me. John says Reinders, Marmouche, Shirky, Holland, Doku, Savino, Rodri. We can't compete with that. We sure can't. Kwame says it's so disappointing that we failed to get a striker in January. John says Arsenal are the only club that seems to consider, monitor, and look to talk to players who are shambles. Skinner says, I think Semenyo is just as good as Leao. Semenyo and Serie A will ball out like mad. Semenyo just has the look of somebody who we're not even going to want starting. A lot of people that were advocating for him in January, I think it was just a stroke of desperation, but they couldn't even guarantee that they felt like he was a starter. And I'm like, if you don't even think he's a starter, then what the fuck are we talking about? You think he's a squad guy? Why would we bring in somebody for a really expensive squad guy? I don't really get it. I don't really see the Semenyo thing. I feel like I don't get it. Yo-Yo says dual monster, our way to glory. I'm not buying it. Let's see. Jabu says, you raised an important point, Jess. Fun. I can't remember the last time we had fun on the field. Probably that Jesus era when he arrived. I do think that, the players need fun, because basically, and I know that this isn't like the end all be all, but when you're under so much pressure to win, there's nothing to kind of relax it. It's just suffer. Arteta has kind of convinced the players that they need to suffer and die for it. And, there is no fun. You just go on like little robots. And I'm like, I feel like if they played better football, they might be more relaxed and be able to get through the season a little bit easier. But I mean, we're definitely doing we need to suffer. How Arteta used to say in big games, we'd have to suffer. Now we're doing it against everyone in the league. And I just don't feel like that's right. We shouldn't have to suffer every game. Blaze says, I can't lie. I didn't enjoy the season because of our style of play. So I agree with you, Jess. I mean, when I said that, I was met with a lot of vitriol on the timeline, which I kind of accept because, I know how people get. If you say anything that's remotely negative, it's just they just can't take it. But I don't feel like I said anything super out of pocket. I do think a lot of people struggled to get through the season. It was not enjoyable. Whatever the context around it, the injuries or the red cards, I think the red cards and the injuries made it almost unwatchable because at times we had such strange lineups out there. And then the style that we play is already hard to watch, even with a lot of our players fit. So I didn't feel like that was a big deal, to be honest, to say. But it was met with a lot of vitriol, which I think means that people agree, but they just don't want to say it. So yeah. Semenyo hype, that guy shoots just to shoot, spray and play. Let's see. Blaze says people want us to win the league over City and Liverpool, but want us to sign Semenyo. I think we have to sign a higher quality level of player. I think we're kind of beyond the Premier League proven, but we're going to pay too much for them. Not elite, no Champions League experience type of players. We're kind of been there, done that. He's kind of in that same. He's actually in a tier below the Cunhas and the Mbomos because those two at least have real backup in the stats that show that they're top quality players. Or Semenyo's pretty much only been a conversation for a season. really half a season. I just don't see spending 70 million on somebody like him. I just don't see it for us. If we have 70 million to spend or anywhere near that, we need to be chucking that at Xavi Simmons. We need to be chucking that at someone else. Definitely not Semenyo. Dial says, if you're asking me, Saka is set up to be top 3 right wingers for this generation of players unless another Yamal pops up somewhere. That's what I was gonna ask you guys too. Like, I saw something like this morning about Arsenal view Max Dowman as the next Lamine Yamal. How aggressive do you think we need to be in integrating him into the team next season? You know, is he somebody that we should be holding space for? Like, genuinely, like, let's actually think about it. I know, like, the instant response is gonna be, "No, we need to win now," but genuinely, if he's somebody that has the type of level of, like, a Lamine Yamal, how much space should we be holding for somebody like that? Could Ethan and Max be able to add some real quality into this team attack-wise, or is it just too early for us to be really putting the pressure on them? To me, Ethan should be taking up he should be having more of a MLS season next season, in my opinion. Like, he's more than capable of it, but I haven't seen enough of Max, but the way that they're talking about him, I'm like, "Well, shit, put him in the team." You know, let's see what it is, but, you know, I don't know. And I wanna know what you guys think, because if they think he's that special, then surely he gets some good minutes next season. It can't be that he's taking up a squad position, but we're not using him because he's too young, you know? Dio says Dauman and Winieri are the backups for Saka. Seems obvious to me unless Arteta is going to trust them in midfield. Shamara says, I don't think we should be planning with him in mind. We shouldn't be holding off from buying and attacking mid because of Dauman. Really good point. Kwame says Rice, Zubimendi, and Odegaard. Cyprian says, what's his position on our team? I guess it's right wing. Errol says, if Arsenal signs Sane, Arteta will get sacked next season. He has got to stop buying ex-City and Chelsea players who are past their sell-by date. There are other players out there. Oh my gosh. New Music says, is he 15? I think so. John says, but honestly, I'm excited to see Arteta develops Sesko and the way he transformed Havertz. Keenan says, Dauman and Wanyeri feel like an Odegaard. I think they need a good loan in a softer league to keep improving. MLS step up is incredibly rare. That's interesting. The loan situation, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. But I also don't trust our loan system. I think we're quite poor at it. When's the last time a player has had a successful loan? You know, where they went somewhere and it wasn't a total flop. You know, I don't know if I would want them going on loans, but it's either you're gonna put them in the squad and use them or not, you know, so they can't just sit around for nothing. Anton Dunn says, I think as aggressive as Barca got with Yamal involved, the number 10 role that I want us to have should ensure he doesn't break down. Laundry says, and that I think that's the biggest problem though, is that the way that we play and the way that Arteta really struggled to get the likes of Emil and Fabio going, whether you like them or not, whether you thought that they were good enough or not, is irrelevant. They were both number 10s that Arteta really struggled to integrate into the team because he was desperate to have this weird left center mid role. So I don't really see, outside of them playing right wing, him being able to integrate them in the 10 role, because nobody plays in the 10 role. We quite literally do not play with a 10. We don't. We play with 8s, and they're not 8s, they're 10s. So I just wonder how Arteta is going to do that. I mean, with Zubimendi and Rice, I do think that we should move to a double pivot and give ourselves like a more simplified way of playing, but we know we're not going to do that. So yeah, Laundry Basket says Arsenal is like the absent father that comes back and relies on the kid to pay the bills when they become NBA stars. Saka, Ethan, MLS Dauman. Does buying an attack mid send signals to Max though and cause him to want out? It's a hard balance, and it's I don't feel I don't know. Are we the type of is would bringing in a Xavi Simmons or somebody like that make him agitate because he wouldn't feel like he has a path? How do we show him that he has a path, but also improve the team at the same time? Not block the path, but also make sure that we have enough creativity in the team in the short term. I do think it's a difficult balance to strike, but I do think Arsenal will probably rely upon Ethan and Max to fill those gaps, and hopefully it works because at the same time you can't have them in the team and just play Trossard there instead. And I think that's the thing that I'm looking forward to this season. The biggest, like not the one of the biggest changes, but one of the changes is when we have a situation. Y'all need to get down. Um, when we have a situation where you can utilize somebody else in the 10, it cannot be Trossard. It needs to be one of the kids. New Music says Carabao Cup games at 16 maybe, then see if he's ready to jump to league matches later on. Trossard, I like Trossard. I don't like the slander. I like him. David says no other club does this. Why are we hold on? Why are we talking about development and path for a 15-year-old? I do think like other clubs do talk about this and they do consider the players that they have coming through their academy if they're good enough. I don't think that that's like a weird thing. It's just we're in a very delicate situation where nobody wants to talk about the future because the now is right here. And so yeah, I totally understand, that nobody wants to talk about the future. And if you start talking about the Ethans and, the Dowmans, then we're talking about like almost foregoing the now. But I think, no other club looks at young players and thinks we can't utilize them while we are winning. And only Arsenal fans think that way, where it's like, okay, we're win now. So that means no kids. And it's like, yeah, but other teams integrate young players into their team all the time and still win things. Barcelona literally did that. PSG literally did that. They have young players in their team right now. So there has to be a little spot for him. He just can't be super relied upon, I guess. Seko says, we aren't going to sign anyone. New Music says, but it's still very young. It is young. It's just, but if they think that if they're saying he's Lamine Yamal levels, which I don't know if he is, that's just what they're saying and that's how they view him, then he's more than good enough to play a role, this season. Redemption says, I think our fans are starting to accept we aren't winning now, so we're looking at the future and hoping. I disagree. I think there is a world where you bring in younger players and you still win things. I don't think experience equals always winning. I really don't. Experience to me is a little bit overrated. I just think you need the talent in the team. There are too many teams that have won things this season for us to believe that having young players in your team means retroactively you're not winning anything now. I think that's an Arsenal fan thing. I think that's a young player means forever until we win something. I just don't believe that. We've had old ass fucking teams before that haven't won shit. Josh says, but those young players are surrounded by experienced players, unlike our team. Is our team not experienced? What's inexperienced about our team now? It's if our players are not experienced by now, then I don't know what we're doing. They're not going to be surrounded by children. Saka is one of the most experienced players in our squad now. He's been around since he was like 16. He's 24 now. He's played in finals. He's the starting right wing for England and Arsenal. He's experienced. Odegaard is experienced. Rice is experienced. Gabrielle's experienced. Saliba's experienced. Raya, like these players are not children, so they should be able to have a kid in the squad. They're not children. Yo-Yo says MLS and Ethan were forced to play last season due to poor squad building. Arteta has no intention of using them as much as he did. Haaland bailed them out again. Do you think that MLS is not going to start at left back then? Because I do think he's going to start at left back. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. I know that Calafiore is a great player, but MLS, I feel like he pretty much solidified the fact that that's his position, and unless Calafiore does something special, that's his position. So, yeah, I don't know if I 100% agree with this because I would imagine when we line up next season at the beginning of the season, the back line will be most likely probably White because Timber might not be ready yet. Probably Gabrielle and Saliba and MLS. You know, Ethan, maybe not, but that's because, Ethan probably plays in a different position that's a little bit more, with the players that are on the team sheet no matter what. So, yeah, John says if Calafiore was fit, we would have never seen MLS. And that may be true, but things have changed now. So the first part of that statement that Arteta didn't have any intention of utilizing them as much as he did is probably true, but things have changed now. I just don't see how you would bench MLS at this stage. How we got here is irrelevant at this stage. And I think if you did spend what would we spend 30 million or 37 million on Calafiore, you would expect him to start over MLS. So what would be the big deal of not starting MLS instead of Calafiore? But now things have changed. So why would Arteta drop MLS when he quite literally was probably one of our players of the season? Um, Elvis says at least left back is no longer an issue. I don't think it is either. I think we have our starter, and Calafiore is going to have to rip it from this 18-year-old like fingers. Dio says Dowman could have debuted this season if we were so inclined. Wasn't he blocked? I don't know. People are saying he was blocked. Was he blocked, or could he have been available? I don't know. I think if Dowman gets the same minutes as Ethan did last season, that would be really good. I don't think he will. MLS is the only youth player who may get an increase in minutes. If they rate Dowman more than Ethan, then I don't see why he wouldn't get some minutes. But like even the Sterling minutes, because there's a couple of different minutes, that you could get. You could get the when Odegaard's not playing in the cups, and then there's the minutes that Sterling was getting when, in the cups as well, where both Ethan and Dowman could take those minutes. It's going to be interesting next season because I don't think you can keep these players from getting some sort of role in the team now. You can't be saying that Max Dowman is, Yamal levels and Ethan is not somebody that you can hide anymore. So, yeah, like it's time. There's Hand of Arsenal says Magalhaes is expected to sign a long-term deal until 2030. The player received a tentative offer to nearly treble his wages from Saudi Arabia, but declined. Berta was well aware of that offer and used the injury layoff of both Bakayo and Magalhaes to his advantage by building a rapport with the players in their camp, subsequently advancing both extensions. Advanced talks for Magalhaes first reported by Simon McBell. And that's good news. I mean, I didn't really expect him to go anywhere, but, that's good news that Gabriel is staying. I think we now really know how important he is. If you didn't know, now you know. Anton Dunn says, I feel MLS is a left 8-6 next season a lot more. Interesting. I feel like we think that, but do you actually think Arteta is going to play MLS at left center mid ahead of or instead of Declan Rice, Marino, or Kai Havertz? John says, the good thing is that if G6 has a bad season due to his injury, Calafiore or Kivior can play there. The Arsenal perspective says Saka, Zubimendi, and Magalhaes deals should go through according to Simon McBell. Cool. That's good. Let's move on, Berta. I'm fully these are like regurgitated news. I'm obviously happy about that stuff, but it's kind of like things we already know. You guys have been saying for months that Saka would sign a new deal and Gabriel would sign a new deal and Zubimendi would sign. So it's time for some new stuff. New links, new players. It feels a bit stale, no offense, but it does. Seco or Checo? Keko? Gecko? Sheko? I lost faith and believe in Arsenal and transfer market. Tayo Tai says EPL is very, very physical. Dowman will need to be carefully developed don't want a Jack Wilshere rerun. Shamara says contract extensions were important this summer. And still the biggest one, or probably the one that's most uncertain, is one that we haven't heard very much about, and that's Saliba. So I think we all kind of assume that Saka and Magalhaes are going to resign, but what about Saliba? Because that changes a lot. If he doesn't resign, things change a lot. Just a question: in a world where we don't sign Sesko or Gyokeres, which forward would you go for? I don't know. Hold on, my leg is like caught and like I'm in trouble. My leg was like numb. Who do we go for? If we don't get either one of those, I don't know. I don't really like anyone else, so I don't know. I don't know. It's a hard one. I don't really know because I don't really want like any of like the Ekatikes or any of those types of people. So um I don't know. That's a hard one. I don't have an answer for it. Not yet. Shamaria says, I bet Saliba is waiting to see if we'll be ambitious in the market. Osimhen, Kwame says we should sign Gyokeres. Osimhen, Cyprian says, if you don't sign a striker, let's just quit. If you don't sign a striker, let's just quit. Osimhen, Isak, Della, the Great. If they drop the ball in this transfer window, I'm going on a sabbatical this season. People need to relax. Saliba will sign a new contract. Nick Woldamade, that's my left field choice. I've heard like a little bit about him, but I haven't really watched him, so I don't know. I guess then I would be looking at Mateta and saying like, hey, do you want to wear the number 14? Do you want to make Arsenal French again? Because, listen, we need something. We need something, but yeah. Dio says Jess Ekitike will be the only thing we can go for, I guess. Enrique had Dembele in the 9 and Flick had Ferran Torres in the 9 with Lewandowski out. Arteta wanting Kai Marino to play the 9 says it all. Yeah, I mean, he loves those players. He likes those types of players. That's his type of player. Like I don't know how else to, he loves like if you buy Kai and then you turn around in the next summer, don't go out and get like a real player and you go out and get Marino, then you're basically telling me that you like those traits. I think he likes the off the ball traits and I don't know. He likes something about those types of players. So, and I think a big thing is Arteta wants to make sure somebody can head the ball in, maybe he doesn't want to have like a Trussard up there or, a Ethan in the 9 or Saka in the 9 or Martinelli because they're not great headers of the ball, So I think a lot of that is more about their height, and Arteta's like obsessed with the height thing. That's very clear. He needs somebody that's tall. So yeah, that's just who he is now, man. Like he's all about tall players off the ball, shin kicking and shit. Bruh, Arsenal could have signed Tony and went for Marino. John says the way we are entering next season feels like prime banter era. Hopefully things change. It's early in the window, says everyone. But, y'all better hope that we get the players that we need to get because, like, getting pelters for, being concerned about the window feels very disingenuous when the last window ended the way that it did. I don't feel like anybody who is, scared that the window is not going to turn out the way that we want it to, like, should feel bad about that. Yo-Yo says Fellaini left quite an impression on Arteta. Victor says we may not be able to win the Prem or UCL, but we could win the NBA for sure. Anton Dunn says hence why Sesko instead of Gyokeres. Pat said, Jess, I'm in Oregon getting ready to move back to Virginia. If you're near either of those places, we should get together for a match sometime. I'm not near any of those places, unfortunately. But thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. And you said you're moving. Like, are you moving today? Good luck on your move because I know moving is like super, super hard. But yeah, let me know why you're moving from Oregon to Virginia too. Because yeah, that is a long and it's a different move. It's two different, completely different places. The Arsenal perspective says, who's watching the Club World Cup? I want to see how Xabi Alonso does with Los Blancos. I definitely am going to be watching the Club World Cup. I'm personally am interested in the Club World Cup, but more just because it's a tournament that doesn't have anything to do with us. You know, I'm like, cool, we can watch it and it's not a big deal for any of us. And it's just random, you know. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens in the Club World Cup. Also going to be covering the Gold Cup. Just found that out recently. So Gold Cup and then the Women's Euros also as well. So there's tons of football on this summer. Um, so yeah, Yo-Yo says the difference between last summer and this is Berta. Quite a few of us are pinning our hopes on him saving Arteta from himself and the players from Arteta. We really need Berta to come through and have a big summer. Like this quiet start has got to be because he knows what he's doing and not because he's gotten sucked into the Arteta's, you know, and Cronky sphere of how they do transfers. And if it comes out that, like, you know, if it ends up that we don't have a good summer window and his hands were tied behind his back, or, you know, he had a lot of you know, pushback, he should resign, you know, and not let this become his narrative either, because what's the point of having him here if he doesn't have autonomy? Um, John says the prize money for Club World Cup is 1 billion, right? It's a lot of money. Mark says Arsenal fans like to moan a lot. We've come a long way. We have to trust the guys who have taken us to this point. If things regress, then we can talk. Things have already regressed though, Mark. I think that's the thing. It's like that was something that could have been said last summer, but you know, the last summer was, you know, a lot of people were concerned about that window because we weren't really hearing anything. We know what Arsenal are like when they're going to do something in a summer window. We know about it. I know people have said that we work in silence, but I think that's a convenient way of trying to keep people from complaining because we're supposedly doing things behind the scenes. But for the most part, we tend to know what we're doing to a certain extent. We knew we were getting Jesus. We knew we were going to get a left back. We knew we were going to get, you know, Declan Rice. We knew we were going to get a defender. We knew something was going to come in. The kind of secrecy of this window and the lack of like hard, you know, we're going to get this done, we're going to get this done, and the way that the briefs are coming out, it's not really about moaning. I just think after the last two windows, I don't know how anybody can sit here and say Arsenal fans are just moaning when we didn't get the striker, we didn't get a winger, we didn't get a striker in January when we really needed one. We are beyond Arsenal fans are just panicking for no reason. We're beyond that now, you know, trusting the guys who have taken us here. Those same people left us like the club out to dry this whole season. We had crazy injuries, and they decided to let the January transfer window pass us without doing anything. You know, we've had two title races. The last one, we were within 2 points. And instead of going out there and getting the X factor that they said they needed after they came out with the briefs about Isak and Elise, they did nothing. So this whole idea about trusting them and, you know, you're just moaning for the sake of moaning, it doesn't work anymore. Like these are the things that you guys have been saying from before, but it just feels very like disingenuous. I don't get why we need to trust people that haven't done the job. Like it doesn't make sense. Um, Arsenal perspective says another left field name, Oyan Sanset. I do like Sanset. I think he's a good box crasher. He scores lots of goals, but he's just not somebody that's going to create football the way that we need. And I really think we need to start getting players that do stuff on the ball, and their main qualities cannot be arriving in the box, heading the ball in, you know, runs and shit. They need to have like their main things need to be doing stuff with the ball, moving away from Xhaka and into this box crasher Casper like left center mid role has really like I think made us a way worse football side. So yeah, I don't even feel like it's a personal preference. I feel like you can look at it with our eyes and say, we're we're not getting dominated physically, but we struggled against PSG to really keep up with them footballing wise, and that was hard to watch, so yeah. John says this is our last season of being delusional. Wenger went 3 seasons finishing second before winning the Premier League. Arteta is on his third, believe. Boy says people have yet to realize the weakest part of the club is the fans. I'm really feeling Eze for this team. I would love Eze. NC USA Gunner says clearly the Cronkies have a secret agenda to win leagues in all the other sports they own except for the Prem. Woody Wood says Mateta from Palace, another hitman I'd take and Prem ready. Terry Tibbs says I am a big Arsenal fan from America, 300 pounds. Yeah, you said you're 300 pounds? So you're a big fan from, I kind of get what you're saying, but I don't know if I believe you. Inner Circle says KSC lied. They said knocking down Highbury plus UCL would mean that we're compete with the best. Effing time to deliver on has long passed. Nations League is on today. Mata says, remember when we used to complain about Xhaka, didn't know how bad things could get. Josh says, we all know how this club moves. If you went through the summer windows of 15, 16, then when we only signed check from Chelsea, then you know why we can never fully trust the club. And yeah, I just feel like it's really easy to sit there and say Arsenal fans are just panicking. But it's almost like the best gaslighting I've ever seen, where to me, yeah, it's the best gaslighting you could ever see from a fan base where you're telling people that they're overreacting and that their fears are not valid when those fears were definitely valid just 12 months ago, and then also 6 months ago. So it's kind of like stop gaslighting. You have every right to be concerned, and until they show that they can do the right thing and really compete and come up with a really good summer window, I think people will have concerns. I don't think people are just panicking for the sake of panicking. Um, so yeah, it's crazy. Bulgarian says there's no way we are not signing 2 quality forwards. Surely for now, let's just relax. Terry Tibbs says 1 striker, 1 left. Like, I think you mean like left forward and 1 cam. Brian says, I think it's the ownership. They are fine with moving slowly in the windows. They are fine with the manager. They're fine with the manager that doesn't win trophies. Everyone hate. I think the one thing that probably annoys me the most is that I feel like they think that they're so smart and that they're reinventing the wheel by having this new, like this, novice coach and this young team, and that they can do it. And, nobody else has really done it, but we're going to do it. And, you don't have to buy attackers. You can do it without. And it's like, you could go slow in the window and, you're playing checker, or like they're playing checkers and we're playing chess. But it's like, I just rather us just do what the other good teams are doing. I don't really want to try to recreate the wheel. I just want us to do the wheel, so, buy good players, buy attackers, get young, talented players, buy more than what you need, do it quickly, get them in early, just the things that all the other good clubs tend to do, but we pretend like we don't need to do because they're playing checkers and we're playing chess, like I don't get it. Anton Dunn says the ownership takes so long because they're negotiating paying as little as possible up front, which I do agree. I think a lot of the back and forth and the slowness of negotiations is because we don't want to pay a lot up front and we want to spread things out. And, we've been known to, I wouldn't say be disrespectful, but clubs have outed us for being penny pinchers, so I think that that's probably true. Remy says this is the transfer window. If they mess this up, I predict departures for our top players. Yo-Yo says, I'm not complaining yet, but I'm not assuming the worst either. I'm giving Berta the benefit of the doubt until certain dates of the summer. We were primed for a league title charge after winning back-to-back FA Cups. then proceeded not to buy a single outfield player. Ugh, that was bad. So all this, remember where we came from, BS can STFU. We are supposed to be elite, but it's down to KSC that we have not been for 20 years. Also, players arriving late in the box is like 55% part of our problems last 3 seasons. But yeah, I just think, you have every right to be concerned or at least anxious, and there's no reason to like pretend like, we don't, we haven't been let down in the past. And so, it's like any relationship. When you've been let down, you start to think that those things are going to happen again. That's all. Um, and I think we're all kind of hoping for the best, preparing for the worst type of thing. Have to do that at Arsenal, but hopefully we get some good news on at least the striker soon. I don't think there's anything to worry about when it comes to Zubimendi. I really hope we don't go with Sane. That would be a huge letdown, but I do think that that might just be agent talks. I'm hoping they released a list of 20 people that are going to be let go, including Jorginho and Tierney. So if you didn't know that, they've been officially let go now, and they're trying to negotiate new contracts for Chloe Kelly and Thomas Partey. So make of that news what you will. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel on your way out. We're gonna go ahead and end the stream here, just because Nations League is on, and I know some of you guys are gonna want to watch that. But yeah, hopefully we get some good news soon. Hopefully before the end of the week. Like this video, like I said, subscribe to the channel on your way out, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.